Hey everyone, I'm Justin Fiedler, and this is DIRTRACKR Conversations. My guest this week is a 17-year-old racer from Oregon who recently made his 410 sprint car debut at the Wild Wing Shootout in Arizona. It's wild to think that even at 17, Tanner Holmes already has 11 years experience behind the wheel between outlaw karts and sprint cars, and that he's been successful at all levels. He joins me this week to talk about becoming the winningest driver in the history of Red Bluff Outlaws in California, getting sprint car experience on the West Coast, making his 410 debut against drivers like Donnie Schatz and Tony Stewart, and growing his popular YouTube channel to more than 40,000 subscribers. This was a fun one for me, as me and Tanner are actually from the same town in Oregon. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Tanner Holmes. You just became the winningest race car driver at Red Bluff Outlaws, which, you picked up your 41st win. What was that like?
That was incredible. For anybody watching that doesn't know about the Red Bluff Outlaws, it's a small outlaw kart track located in Northern California, specifically Red Bluff. And that's kind of the birthplace of outlaw karts, the form of racing that I grew up doing. We started running there in 2010, but specifically that place has been around since the 1980s. So like I said, the birthplace of outlaw karts, that's where QRC got started, which is the type of kart that I drive. And that place just means a lot to me. And I'm sure we'll kind of get more into it in the interview of just that's where racing and my interest for it got started. So always fun to run there. We've actually been competing there for the last 11 seasons since 2010. I haven't missed a race. So fortunate enough, we picked up 41 victories and got that done just a couple weeks ago. So super cool to be at the top of that list, and hopefully we can just continue to add to it.
It's wild to think that as young as you are, that you've been racing for 11 years at this point. Like when you look back over, as young as you still are, do you feel like a veteran at this point?
In a way, I guess in the outlaw kart ranks, I guess you could say I am, or, just because we've been doing it so long. But now moving into sprint cars, it's just such a new ball game. So I'm just a student of learning from guys that have been doing it, not just 11 years, but 20, 30, even I guess 40 years in the sprint car. But the outlaw kart stuff, it's super fun. Like we touched on, been doing it for 11 years. And it's just something that even though we have done it so much and race so often, we still learn stuff every single time we're at the track. And I think that's something also just for a lot of young kids coming up. Now we have the chance to race so often and compete, every single Saturday throughout the year, where I think maybe 10 or 15 years ago that wasn't available. So these next class of drivers, as the years go on, are only going to be better and better, I guess, at a young age.
I'm curious because, one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the show is me and you are literally from the same town in Southern Oregon, Medford. And when I was a kid, like the first races I ever went to as a kid were at the old Medford Speedway, which hasn't existed for a very long time. But I'm wondering, once I got older, like the paved stuff was more, like kind of what we were into in NASCAR. And we used to go to Northwest Tour races and things like that. But how did you get into dirt racing? Like, was it Southern Oregon Speedway, or, what kind of piqued your interest when you were younger to get into dirt racing?
Yeah, the Southern Oregon Speedway for me is kind of what did pique that interest. My dad was never a racer. He was a NASCAR fan, which I guess is something that, it's general. He went to a couple of NASCAR races, but never really was involved with dirt racing. And my mom had no racing background at all. And then I guess when I was about 5, 6 years old, through my dad's company, he was actually doing some work with the guy, and his friend and him, the guy happened to have an outlaw kart for sale. And, that racing interest, like I said, was there in the back of his mind just from NASCAR, but we didn't know anything about Southern Oregon Speedway or even Red Bluff, just a couple hours south of us, even though it was so big at the time. And we got the cart, got started, and, we went to one race, and you meet a couple of friends and you meet more friends, and it just kind of, snowballs into what it is today, where we travel to different tracks in race, on a weekly basis. But the Southern Oregon Speedway, and specifically the little track there where they ran the outlaw karts, which isn't really around today. They're trying to rebuild it, but that, and then going to the big track on Saturday night to watch like ASCS regional races, or, traveling a little bit in California to like Silver Dollar and watch some outlaw shows. That's really where it got started. And then from there, like I said, just through the years, you start racing more and more.
What do you like about the kind of outlaw kart platform as you're kind of learning and coming up, and you've been kind of making this transition into sprint car racing? Like, what can you take from outlaw karts into sprint cars?
I think one thing that helps the most from outlaw carts is how fast everything happens. I mean, the power to weight ratio is pretty similar to a 410 sprint car. They're small, they accelerate quick, and like I said, everything just happens so fast. So you kind of get used to that pace of racing. I just recently ran my first 410 sprint car race down in Arizona, and even being on a big track like that, like the Arizona Speedway was, it almost gave me a feeling of what it was like to be in an outlaw cart because things happen so fast, and so it almost felt normal in a way. So outlaw carts, and another benefit of them is they're just so competitive. You're not racing against four cars on a weekly basis. The Red Bluff Outlaws this year has been averaging 200 carts across 6 divisions. So whether you're getting started at 5, 6, 7 years old, or you're 30 years old just looking to have a good time, there's a competitive class for you to go out and have fun and still get that adrenaline rush and be up to speed, and not just, I guess, cruising around a little racetrack.
Tell me about your kind of progression in outlaw carts. You're running at Southern Oregon Speedway. Like, how long did it take before you guys started traveling? And, like obviously Red Bluff is, what, 3 hours kind of south of where you are. What was your first trip down there? Like, what was kind of that thought process as you guys kind of branch out?
Yeah, so we started running at Southern Oregon in 2009, 2010. And quickly, we got up to speed. I think I won my first race at the end of my first season. But of course, just like any young kid, first time out there, I was just pedaling around, getting lapped, and, maybe getting a couple incidents, but raced there for a year or two. And then I actually started traveling north of us to a track known as Roseburg, which that's about an hour up I-5. So we ran there a little bit, and we actually ended up winning some races. And so just like any young kid, when you get started, you kind of have high hopes. And especially when you start winning races, you get pretty confident. So we had heard about the Red Bluff Outlaws and the competition down there. So we knew in order to be a good racer, you got to race with the best possible. And I think it was the end of the 2010 season. The Red Bluff Outlaws has this big race known as the West Coast Nationals, which is where usually even more cars show up, more money on the line. And we went down there, with a lot of confidence because we had spanked everyone in Oregon in the beginner box division, the first division you can run. And I ended up not making out of the lowest main. I wrecked a bunch, and I wasn't really it. So we quickly realized that, in order to be the best, we have to race down there. And that's where our transition to the Red Bluff Outlaws kind of started. And there's a couple other tracks we would run during the summertime to keep those skills sharp, but Red Bluff was the main one that we always ran on a full-time basis to, race against that competition level.
When you kind of start getting a little bit older and you kind of you start understanding, what you're doing, and you start to think about where you want to go, when was that first kind of time that you thought about getting in a sprint car? What was those conversations like with your family about what was next?
I think that goes back to the Southern Oregon Speedway. Like I mentioned, we had watched a bunch of ASCS shows there, or one of the big events was like Speed Week would come through Oregon, and one of the first stops was right there at the Southern Oregon Speedway. So immediately I had my eyes focused on that. There's a bunch of other divisions we would watch: street stocks, modifieds, late models, and those were all really cool. But just there's not a lot of things, I guess, that can compare to a sprint car. And another thing, I guess, that added to that is not only would we watch the races, but after the races, we go into the pits. There'd be a lot of the top name drivers along the West Coast. It's funny, even in my closet still today, I have hero cards from Rico Abreu, Tim Kading, Bud Kading, and a lot of guys that would just come through the area during that time of year. And maybe you get a chance to sit in someone's car, or sit at their trailer for a second and talk with them at just a young age. And that all just built up to, wanting to get started in sprint cars. And another thing is, here in Oregon, we got a great starter class known as the limited division. So it's a little bit more affordable to kind of get going. And also the class is fairly large, 20 to 30 sprint cars on a normal night. And you can run at 5 or 6 different tracks. So that made it a little bit easier as well, transitioning from an outlaw cart to a sprint car and not having all that horsepower, I guess, right out of the gate.
Is that like a 305 class?
Yeah, it's like our 305 class here. It's a little bit different of an engine package, but it makes about 550 to 600 horsepower. And like I said, that's just a great way to, get a little bit of speed out of the gate, but you're not right into a 360, and you're definitely not even close to a 410.
So when did you first get in a sprint car then?
So I think my first year was I think at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I just got to run a couple races. And my first one was at the Southern Oregon Speedway, which was cool because it was my home track. And I even got to actually do a little practice session before, I think the Wednesday before the Saturday show. And there was like 12 cars, just got to go out there and get on the gas a little bit. And fortunate enough, we're able to figure out some things with the setup because we did have a crew chief to help us out at the beginning. And so it was more just on myself as a driver to figure things out. So I think my first year I ran about 4 races because it was right at the end of the season. And then I took on my first full year where we probably did about 30 shows, and then even transitioned that year into a couple 360 races, which we got to run that Oregon Speed Week, which is what I grew up watching as a kid. And that's where I got to run my first 360 races.
What tracks are you going to? Willamette, I'm guessing. I mean, are you traveling up to Washington at all? Like, where all are you going?
Yeah, so Southern Oregon Speedway was a main one. Cottage Grove, which Cottage Grove runs a lot now. They're probably the most popular track in Oregon. We would also go over to Coos Bay, which is right on the Oregon coast, and then Willamette, right up the road from Cottage Grove. We even did a couple races, if you know Banks,
Mhm.
Sunset Speedway Park, which is like a really small bull ring. So that was unique because that kind of reminded me of my Outlaw kart days, just really door to door. You know, you're not even really full throttle at a lot of points on the track. And then towards just the couple recent years, and really getting transitioned into the 360, we started running Skagit up in Washington and then ran Grays Harbor, the other track in Washington. So that's what a lot of our local scene looks like. But especially recently, we've tried to travel a little bit out of that to, see higher competition levels.
Have you gone to California at all?
We ran one race down there for the first night of Oregon Speed Week, but we haven't got the chance to go down there. I think here to start the season, though, we're going to, especially with Oregon and Washington, because of just everything going on in the world. The racing scene here is kind of undetermined. It's definitely a week by week thing where California is starting to figure some things out.
In terms of your, once you get into sprint cars and start progressing, how big of a jump is it then to go from the limited sprint car then to a 360?
The limited actually, it made it easier in my opinion. If I would have just hopped right in a 360, especially being young, 14 transitioning to 15, you're still, you're maturing and you learned a lot of things in outlaw carts, but that's a big vehicle and a lot of horsepower to have even in the limited division. So transitioning from the limited to the 360, it actually just made it easier and it felt just like a little bit more horsepower, and you could actually do a couple different things with the race car. One thing about the limited, since they don't have that power, you can only run certain lines on the track. Maybe, for example, at a place like Willamette or Cottage Grove, it's hard to make the top side work because you can't carry as much momentum. And it's just a lot about being straight and knowing what your car can do. So once you get in the 360, it drives a little bit easier, but then you're going up against, a lot more top tier guys and bigger money teams. So it's been a lot of fun though, to get to run the 360 and now even get to be behind the wheel of a 410 a little bit. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do more in 2021.
How are you kind of deciding your schedule now? Like, are you still running? I know you obviously have been running Red Bluff here recently. Like, is that something you do where you kind of mix in throughout the year where you're doing outlaw kart stuff plus the sprint car stuff?
Yeah, so I have a younger sister and she's very interested in racing as well, Carly. And she's a big part of like stuff we do in the YouTube videos and has been racing just a couple of years less than me because she's 3 years younger. But we do some outlaw kart stuff in the summertime. Red Bluff doesn't run. There's a track known as Cycleland, which is kind of like the other really popular outlaw kart track in Northern California. So we still mix in a little bit of kart stuff on weekends where it's convenient, just so she can race. Now that she's kind of gotten old enough to run the limited, she's going to be doing that as well. So we're going to just try to mix in as many shows there as possible. And we're trying to get a setup to where we can kind of maybe both race at, a track where maybe they're both running the limited and the 360 on the same night. But so for us planning a schedule right now, we're just trying to, well, we know we kind of have to travel this year, but just wherever we can race close to home, do that. And then try to plan bigger trips on certain parts of the year. Like maybe last year, for example, in August, we went and ran ASCS Speed Week, which was through Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. So anytime when we can hit a lot of shows, out of town, we're definitely going to try to do that.
How has it been with your sister? Like, I'm curious, like, are you able to kind of help bring her along faster? Like, obviously you didn't have someone like yourself, maybe necessarily to lean on when you were learning, but now that she has you, is she coming along pretty quickly?
Yeah, she is. I think it definitely helps. I wish I would have had someone in my ear that would have already done it before. I think that, that just makes the progression that much faster, but she just really enjoys racing. I've talked to her a little bit. I don't really know what her end goals are. I think she just really enjoys doing it at this time. And obviously being a female in the sport, there's so many opportunities there. So I just keep preaching to her to work hard and, figure out your craft. And I think this year, especially getting to do more limited races, she only has done son won, and that was her first race, which actually ended up being kind of a big deal for our team. And posting that video on the channel, a lot of people love Carly, and she's a big character in my videos. So we're definitely going to prioritize her racing a lot this year, and just see how we can make the schedule work to where we can both maybe be in different places at once.
Is it nervous? Or, I mean, do you get nervous like watching her race?
Yeah, I actually do. It's funny. I get nervous myself racing, but I get way more nervous when I watch her. And it's weird. It's only usually when I feel like she should be winning the race, or, she's in a good spot to make something happen. It's always like when you're in the car, you're just racing. You're not thinking about any of that. But being in the stands, sometimes I can't even watch. And I hate to say that, but it's tough. So I've gotten better and better with it as we go along.
Are you guys competitive?
We are pretty competitive, and it's been helpful that we haven't been in the same division for the most part, because she's 3 years younger than me. So we're kind of like at the point where, like, once I move up, she's at the point to move into the class that I'm going into. But now we're at the age where, like, in Outlaw karts, there's the open division, which is 13, 14, 15-year-olds up. And so she's been racing with me. And over this winter, we had a couple races up here in Oregon that we ran together, and it definitely got competitive. And, sometimes, the car ride home isn't the greatest, but I'm sure that'll happen more and more as we race in the same division.
How was it getting out and getting a chance to go run with ASCS and do, kind of a swing like you were able to do? Is it, can you feel how much different or, higher the competition level is when you kind of get into a pool of drivers like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really nice to get to do that. We had got to run a couple national races when they do their swing through Washington for the Fred Brownfield Classic and the Dirt Cup. So we got a chance to run with them. And one of the nights we had a ton of speed. So we knew ASCS Speed Week, and especially with how 2020 was going, our racing scene here was so undetermined. We didn't know where we were running until, Thursday, Friday, and races were being announced. So going back and doing that, I think it helped a ton, and especially for building confidence, but also it can tear you down, because the first couple of nights of the week, like, I went on one of my first half miles back there, the Lakeside Speedway in Kansas, and the place was beautiful. Such a smooth track, wide, slick, everything I love to see. And we actually ran like 7th out of like 40 cars. So that was super cool. And so it kind of builds your confidence. And we had a couple more good nights. But then, towards the end of the week, we started to struggle as we got into Arkansas. So once you're racing with guys like that, it can be a benefit. It also cannot be. But for the most part, that made us so much better, because when we came back home to finish off the season, we were flawless. We were really fast.
How do you, I would imagine you're still doing school. How do you kind of mix in school with all of your racing?
Fortunate enough, I actually just recently graduated. So
Okay.
I'm 17, but I was in a program to where I could kind of do some college stuff, which therefore helped me graduate sooner. So I just graduated at the end of December, but for the last couple of years, I was doing that, and it was difficult. School was something that I never really like enjoyed, so it made it a little bit tougher. And then I'm just glad I'm out of it now, especially with still, like, here on the West Coast. I know a lot of kids are my friends in racing. They're doing it all virtually here online, and I can only imagine what that was. So I kind of got out of it at a good time, and now I'm really just focused towards racing.
I want to ask you about that kind of Wild Wing shootout weekend at Arizona, but what was your first chance to get into 410? I feel like I saw one of your videos where maybe you had like done some testing or some practice ahead of time.
Just that first night at the Wild
Okay.
Wing shootout. So they had a practice night, and that helped a ton. So we got some good laps there. And I was really nervous going into the weekend, because all my friends that had ran 360s at the Arizona Speedway talked about how fast it was. Fortunate enough, I'd been on a half mile or two before. So something a little bit bigger than that, but not being in a 410, it overall just made me real nervous. But I think that was a good place to get my first laps, because the track's really wide, really slick. You can move around, and you can kind of do your own thing. And as the weekend went on, we had a couple of problems, but overall we were able to kind of get it all figured out. And the first night was more just, figure out how to race at the pace that these guys were, because even though there was only 24, 25 cars, I would say, 20 of them were pretty good guys. So had some Outlaw guys there, some local California guys. And overall, like I said, just working on racing at that pace. And as the weekend went on, just get better and better, and, try to keep our car in one piece.
How are the nerves when you kind of roll out onto the track the first time and you're looking around at guys like Donnie Schatz and Tony Stewart and Tim Kading and some of those guys that were there?
It's incredible. It really is. In a way, it's a dream come true because things like for me, especially lately, they kind of happen so fast because, I went from not really running a whole or not running a whole lot out of the Pacific Northwest, doing a little bit of ASCS stuff. And we also went back for the Hockett McMillan Memorial in Wheatland. But other than that, I was just, I guess, a Skagit, Southern Oregon, Cottage Grove local guy. And then we went down and ran Arizona with all these, bigger names. It definitely was a huge transition, but even in just those 3 days, you notice a huge difference in driving style and progression that I think now once we start to get back up and going, we're going to see some of those things that I learned in just those short days really carry on to the 360 program.
You were like really respectable those first couple of nights, and I'm wondering like what your kind of goals were. Were you hoping to just finish races? Were you trying to be, like you like I'm gonna go finish top 10? Like, what were you kind of thinking going into that?
I just really wanted to work on, keeping my car in one piece and figuring things out. I think obviously you want to see results, but in our first weekend, for me, it was more important just to kind of get through it and take it all in. And especially like towards the third night, there was little things that I got to work on. Like I really got up, racing against a little bit of a cushion and right on the wall. And then also figuring out, just what kind of moves you can make. I think I was running anywhere from like 12th to 15th, but you can figure out how to throw slide jobs, how to run different lines, and just what the car is going to do with all that power. So for me, the biggest thing going into the weekend was just figure it out quickly and then, try to use that into any more 410 races we're going to be going into 2021.
The one of the things that always kind of interests me about drivers is like their prep. Like, and are you a workout guy? Are you watching a ton of videos? Like, what do you try to do to get ready, especially for your first opportunity in a 410?
Going into a new track, the biggest thing is watching footage. You try to see any recent races there, even if it's not a 410, even if it's a 360 race, modified late model, just get any look at the track beforehand. It's nice to see what lines develop and what people have done in the past. So we definitely did that going into the Arizona Speedway. I do try to keep my fitness up. That's one thing I especially tried to work on during the off season, just a lot of running and just anything working out, lifting weights. And the biggest thing for that is, in sprint cars compared to outlaw carts have quite a few more yellows. So, maybe you get a break here and there. But one of the biggest things transitioning into the sprint car is, you see 25, 30 lap green flag runs. And depending on track conditions, that can get a little tiring. So definitely try to do that. And then one thing that even helps me as of lately is just, creating my YouTube videos. That's one thing at the track that actually takes my mind a little bit off of, the races, or if it's a big scenario like Arizona, and kind of keeps everything more fun. So just once I hop in the seat, it's kind of go time.
Yeah, I would assume that a lot of people that are going to probably end up watching or listening to this have heard about you because of the YouTube channel. And at this point, you're what, north of 40,000 subscribers. You got a pretty
Yeah.
sizable following there. And I'm wondering, like, why did you start the channel in the first place? Did you think it would get as big as it's gotten at this point?
It was actually an idea that my mom came up with. And the biggest thing was just, as the years go on, racing, it's so hard to get noticed. And I've always wanted to, I think that's actually what a lot of kids want to do nowadays. They want to create YouTube videos. It's became so popular. So when I started back in 2016, my idea behind it was actually, I played a unique sport. Maybe it was something that people would find interesting and could follow along with me like a TV show. And so we just started doing it. And, obviously it starts out rough. You're just figuring things out. But then over time, which, through the last 4.5, 5 years, it's kind of just been a process of, learning, researching, what can you do to make your stuff better? But overall, it's definitely helped my name get out there. And I guess it was something that at the time when I started, not a lot of people were doing. And now I think as we get going, more people are kind of maybe trying to video their races or vlog or whatever you want to use the term for. And it's just been something that's been really fun.
Do you have like a certain type of video you like making? Like, I know you guys kind of do all kinds of different stuff, and I want to talk about the podcast too, but you guys kind of have all kinds of different videos. Is there something you enjoy more than the other?
The biggest thing is just race day videos. Those are the easiest to make, and usually I might have one person helping me, or it's just by myself. But I've gotten in a really good routine where I kind of know what I'm looking for. Maybe I have 5 or 6 different types of ways to start a video, whether it's like a montage or it's by the track or something. And so I've kind of gotten comfortable in that aspect. And it's just been a lot of fun to evolve the content. And like I said earlier, researching, trying to get better and get different angles or whatnot. And especially since I've had help, for example, down in Arizona, I had a good friend, Bennett. He was able to go in the infield and get the shots of the cars going by and slow-mo shots and stuff like that. So it's just fun to elevate the content and try to continue to make it better.
In terms of your, like, the kind of groundwork and the grunt work behind the YouTube channel, like, are you editing the videos, or, I know you're shooting a lot of it, but, like, what kind of a camera equipment are we talking about here? What kind of software do you use? Like, and are you doing a lot of that work?
Yeah, I pretty much do everything. Anything that's posted on my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that's all me. All my YouTube videos are filmed and edited by myself, unless it's like a shot of me getting in the car or, something on track. But other than that, it's pretty much me holding a camera. I just have like a big DSLR. It's pretty nice vlogging setup. And then I just edit all my stuff on my MacBook Pro. So I got a nice little setup as far as, making and producing the videos. But I really do enjoy doing it all myself. That's pretty much now, even though I'm just fresh out of high school, I've been able to get it to the point where I'm able to make a little bit of revenue. So it's pretty much my full-time thing as of right now, as I'm just trying to build it through different ways of, posting on YouTube. We also have merchandise, which does fairly well at the track and on our website, and just trying to, I guess, build, even though it is small, build my small business, through what I do in racing.
How do you think your YouTube channel and your YouTube following has affected your racing? Like, are you able to do a better job getting sponsors? You mentioned merch there. Like, how does that kind of affect what you end up doing on the racetrack and with your equipment?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps with the sponsors because they really enjoy, being a part and being branded with the YouTube channel or anything else we're doing, like the podcast and stuff like that. And that's something I'm definitely continuing to try to build, make it or it is brand friendly, but continue to try to bring brands in that, want to work with us or be on the car. And I guess one downside maybe is now that I do post all my stuff, my competitors can go and watch. Like if I have a good night, they can go and watch and see what I did right or wrong. But that's just part of the game and stuff. So we just try to do, different types of unique content. And it's a little bit tougher during the off season because things, a lot less things are going on. I'm sure you've experienced too. You just try to find things to talk about and, bring up to keep your audience in check. But once racing season really ramps up, it makes my job a lot easier because we're always doing something, whether it's at the track. Now this year, we're even trying to we have a backyard track that we built that we're trying to run on a little bit. People enjoy and shot videos, anything that revolves around what we're doing or what race we're headed to. People seem to really enjoy. So anything we can do to just bring our audience in, it's going to be really exciting for this year.
What are some YouTube channels that you like? Is there something at least in the early days you tried to emulate, or, are there ones you particularly enjoy that maybe even aren't racing ones that maybe are other sports or entertainment people?
Yeah, so that's actually was what really inspired me to get started is I don't really watch a whole lot of racing stuff on YouTube besides like highlights from World of Outlaws or any other series. But when I first got started in 2016, one of the reasons why I thought my channel could have potential is because there was two other people, and actually it's funny, their names were Tanner. One of them was a scooter rider, and his stuff blew up because he did, a unique sport of scooter riding. And another one was like a trampoline gymnast. And that wasn't stuff that I was interested in before. But once I started watching their videos, I kind of got hooked on like learning about the sport and how cool it was and the action pack. So I was like, I feel if I did something with racing, it's something I already love to do. We race so much, there would always be some sort of content to post, then maybe people would enjoy what I do. So that's kind of the theory behind it. And then for the most part as well, I watch a lot of YouTubers and podcasts and stuff. Not a lot of things that revolve around racing, but I usually try to watch what top guys are doing to see if you can, obviously, pick it apart and use it to make your stuff better.
One of the neat things that kind of came out of that Wild Wings shootout weekend was you got to do an all access piece with Flow Racing, which is super funny, right? Because you've got the Flow Racing cameras pointed at you and your cameras pointed at them. So you kind of got
Yeah.
to see both sides of it. But how much fun was that?
That was really neat. I know kind of going into it, they said, hey, there might be a chance that you're going to get to do a flow all access, which I thought was cool. And it even gave me the idea. I think something I'm going to try to incorporate in some of my future videos is, try to get some sort of mic setup that maybe when I am just walking around or in the pits, I thought that was neat how they could just pick up conversations that are happening that really adds to, what is going on during the night, whether it's right coming off the track, talking about what the car did and how it reacted, or just, like pre-race stuff, maybe climbing in or just in the trailer. So that was an awesome experience. And I really hope I can do one again.
Tell me about starting the podcast. I know you guys are what, 8 or 9 episodes in, I think at
Yeah.
this point. Why do that? And tell me about some of the guests you've had at this point. I saw Rico was on there.
Yeah, so we started a podcast known as Off the Track, myself and my good friend Bennett. And the biggest thing around starting that is just with everything I've been trying to do on social media, I'm trying to hit different areas. Obviously, having a YouTube channel that gives some sort of long form content in the form of 8 to 15 minute videos. And then also, I obviously have some of my other stuff on socials, Facebook. You post highlight stuff, race recaps, so people that enjoy to watch that. But I didn't have anything where maybe if someone, was driving to the next track, or maybe if they were in a car ride, they could listen to me talk for an hour about a certain topic or interview a guest. And I felt like with how popular podcasts have been becoming, it was just something that was a must. So I had some help from a few people to get a good little setup. And now we have like a little studio room. And just starting that has been so much fun. And it's been a new like creative outlet to try. Over the last 4 years, the YouTube thing, even though we're still working on making it better, it has become comfortable. And a podcast for me was not the most comfortable thing, reaching out to guests, getting them on, and then also interviewing them with good questions. So it has been a little bit difficult, and we've had some good episodes, and we've had some times when maybe reshoot things and stuff like that. But we had my first guest that we had on was my younger sister, because everyone just loves her. So we kind of did that as a trial run. Then we got Rico in over the phone. We had the owner of Fast Four Media, a friend of mine, Kyler Shaw, and then my car owner of QRC, Jimmy Elledge. So we've been doing some episodes with guests. We've also done some episodes just on our own, which is going to be another way to really extend on the vlogs, because so much happens in one race day that we can't include it all in, 12 minutes. So the podcast is going to be a great way for us to really expand on a lot of topics.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Elledge for sure, because people that know about the outlaw kart world, will have heard of QRC, and I mean out here in North Carolina, like there's QRC karts here, and my dad actually worked with Elledge for quite a few years when he was out in the NASCAR world as well. But how important has a guy like him been to your career, and to be able to run those karts and out of that place, what is the benefit of being able to almost like be a house car for a place like QRC?
Oh, it's huge. It's been so much fun, and that's been one of the most valuable friendships that I've created through my racing. I met Jimmy in 2014, I think it was, and then he hired me to be a house cart driver in like 2017, 2018 for QRC, and that has just been so valuable. Not only to have a guy to kind of look up to, ask for advice, whether it even is stuff in outlaw carts or talk to him about stuff that's going on the sprint car side of things, but he's been involved in so much, whether it's NASCAR, outlaw carts, or a lot of different things in dirt track racing. It's just a good guy to kind of lean on, and a great car owner relationship as well.
I am curious about obviously your future, what you want to do. The path of what's next. Like, are you hoping to be a World of Outlaws driver? Are you, are you hoping to get to NASCAR? Like, what are your kind of, the next 5, 10 years you hope look like?
I think for me, the biggest thing is to continue to expand the YouTube channel and the podcast. I think that's actually my main priority. I feel like that could be a pathway for myself to, different opportunities, whatever way I want to go. But definitely sprint car racing is one of the main ones. Work my way, if possible, towards the Outlaws or towards the All Stars, and just becoming a full-time driver, whether that's in my own stuff with the right funding and sponsorship behind me, or in someone else's equipment. But any opportunities that get thrown my way, just try to take advantage of them, and run as far up front and whatever it is.
What else is out there that you want to race? Have you run a micro? Do you want to run a midget? Like, what else is out there that you're interested in racing?
Yeah, I would love to run the Tulsa Shootout, something that's always been on my radar. I've never ran a micro, and I'm hoping I've been talking to a couple of different people to maybe make that happen this next year. So a micro, a midget, obviously the Chili Bowl, that's such a huge event, but anything, like I said, that I get the chance to, because not only is it fun to try, but that makes for like a good video. So I'm hoping this year, maybe even like a time or two, hop in a modified or a late model or something here in the Pacific Northwest, just to try different forms of racing out, because they all have there are things about them that make them difficult, and it's just fun to try.
What does your schedule look like this year? Obviously you guys run, Wild Wing, you've done some Red Bluff stuff. Like, what's next? What is, do you have it all mapped out, or are you just going to kind of see how things go in terms of what tracks are open and things like that?
Yeah, right now we're kind of just we're figuring things out. I do have a couple of chances to maybe run some stuff in the Midwest, but I don't have any of that necessarily figured out yet. I'm just kind of waiting on certain races and stuff to be finalized. But other than that, I think we're going to focus on running a little bit here to start the year at Oregon, Washington. There's some stuff in Montana. There's a ASCS region, frontier stuff that we'll be able to run. I think we're also maybe going to head down south to California, since it seems like they got a couple more races figured out than Oregon and Washington does. And then after that, I think we're definitely going to try to hit the road for a little bit for sections of maybe May and June, where we could run a lot of 360 and 410 races. Just trying to figure out, what's going to be the best and where we can hit the most races in the shortest amount of time, and maybe not have to travel too far. But I think we're also going to plan to run ASCS Speed Week again. That was super beneficial for us, and I think this year it actually is going to be even better because it's before the Knoxville Nationals, and maybe that can lead us right into Knoxville. So we're going to play a little bit by ear, but we're hoping maybe by, maybe the middle of May, as Oregon and Washington and stuff get it together, we'll be able to have a full schedule out.
I'm sure that there are probably people around you, whether you see them at the sprint car track or with the outlaw carts, that are probably kind of on similar trajectories that you're on. And, obviously starting the YouTube channel and kind of understanding how to market yourself and all of that is going to be really, really important going forward. And I'm wondering if you are people approaching you, asking you how to do similar things? Are you trying to help people understand how important this is? Are those conversations happening, or have those conversations happened with other people?
Yeah, I get those messages a lot about, they want to start a channel themselves. And I would encourage people to absolutely do it. And even if it's not a YouTube channel, maybe it's you want to build your racing Facebook page or Twitter or something like that. I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is to, have some form of social media behind you. And especially the time we're living in, I think a lot of people just don't realize in general, how lucky we are to have this. I mean, even the fact that we're shooting a podcast and I'm looking at you through my computer, it's literally crazy. So I think just take advantage of the opportunity that we all have in front of us with our cell phones, with cameras, and make some form of content. Like I said, it doesn't have to necessarily be a vlog. It could be some sort of race recap, or even with the podcast, there's a lot less podcasts out there than there is YouTube channels, because it just hasn't been around as long. So now's a great time to start that, and that could be definitely something that adds to your race team, and brings in an audience that wants to tune in on a weekly basis.
If somebody wants to start a YouTube channel that's a racer like you, do you have a couple of tips, like how often to post, what type of videos, what are those kind of top line things that you would tell somebody to do?
My first tip would be to get started as soon as you can. Don't waste any time. But the second thing is just work on kind of being consistent. Just like with anything you start, you want to come to your viewers on a regular basis, but at least once or twice a week. I totally understand just starting a racing vlog. You maybe run every Saturday night, you post a video, and that's a great way to kind of get your feet wet, get used to being in front of a camera, because some people have the ability where it's a little bit more natural, but also it can be very tough if that's not, if you're not necessarily interested in being in front of a camera. So just be consistent, try different things, and don't be too hard on yourself. It should be something that's super fun, and it's more about, having fun and getting started in it than anything else. So YouTube channels are great. It's awesome to have some form of thing to create on a weekly basis, and reach out to a bunch of different people.
I'm wondering, one of the things, like when me and Ross started Open Red with the Outlaws, to go back and kind of hear those first couple of episodes, and kind of how rough we were, and then how far you kind of come, over the course of time. Like, do you ever go back and watch your old videos and you're just like, I can't believe I said that?
Yeah, I try not to, I'm glad you can relate on that level, and I'm sure we'll even do that a little bit with the podcast. The nice thing about the podcast is I'm a little bit older now, so just you mature everything. So I think it's definitely was a much better start than when I did the YouTube channel. But I'm sure as the years goes on, even videos 2 or 3 years back, not even at the very beginning, I noticed things. I'm like, man, why did I put that in? Or, why is there all this time of me not talking? Or this GoPro is so boring. Why didn't I cut this out? So there's plenty of things you learn. And that's just part of the progression and the fun of all of it.
If somebody, kind of along those same lines, if somebody is going to get started with the YouTube channel, like what do you kind of recommend for, that first setup? Like, are there, is there a good kind of cheap camera? Is there a good kind of free or cheap software that they can get started with?
Yeah. So honestly, if you have an iPhone, that's a great way just to start vlogging. Honestly, the phone cameras are kind of insane how good they've become. And right on your iPhone, I'm not 100% sure what the software would be for like Android, but iPhone, you can edit right on iMovie. I honestly, sometimes I still do edit on iMovie if I need something fast, even on my MacBook or on my phone, just depending on what I shot it on. But that would be a great way to get started. Or I would just recommend any like cheap point and shoot camera. You can find them 200-300 bucks. And then if you did have a little bit bigger budget, some sort of DSLR, because the nice thing about like the camera I have, I can change lenses. And so if I want to have a vlogging lens, or I want to have something for more cinematics and go in the infield and get slow motion shots. But that's something I'm still continuing to try to learn. And I feel like I figured a lot more things out on the videoing side, but now I'm working on editing softwares and thumbnails and stuff like that, because that's almost just as important as the content itself.
How many GoPros have you killed over the years?
I've killed quite a few, unfortunately. And one great thing about GoPro is they have nice cases now. And so it usually just destroys the case, but those are still like 50 bucks a piece. So I need a GoPro sponsorship bad. Other than that, I have lost a couple. Those are the saddest. I think at the end of the Cottage Grove season this last year, one flew off my car and we don't know where it went. Like it went somewhere in the bushes, and we tried to find it, but that's just part of it. And you know, I've been trying to get better and better GoPros as well. And that's important to have that awesome onboard or some sort of footage so people can follow along with your race. And it's really nice when it's just right there in the cockpit, because it's about as close as it can get.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things about Ross and all the video work that he did was he almost had like where he had the drivers would help him, like if they were under caution, they would reach up and like wipe off the GoPro for him.
Yeah, I do that. Yep.
Yeah, and then also like the scavenger hunts, and I've heard about the Swindell Speed Lab guys doing the same thing, where it's like you lose a camera and then like how long you go take to try to find it, whether it's in the track or off the track. You're like, oh, like, do you have like a personal best for how long it took you to find a camera that flew off?
I've had one, or the worst is I found remains of one. You know, you kind of just find the scattered parts. I think that took probably 30-45 minutes just going up around. That was at Cottage Grove as well. But then, like I mentioned, we lost the one at Cottage Grove, and you know, it could still be somewhere out there. It just sitting there in a case. It's still a good GoPro. That's the sad part. It just, you know, it just flew off. So I'm sure I'll run into that plenty more times throughout the years.
Cool. Well, Tanner, I certainly appreciate the time today. Give me the plug zone. Where can people find you? Like, where's the YouTube channel? Give me the whole rundown.
Yeah, so you can just go to youtube.com/Tanner Holmes. That's my main channel where I upload all my racing vlogs. And then also we have my Facebook page, just Tanner Holmes, Instagram @TannerHolmes18. And that's also my Twitter handle as well. And we try to post as much unique content as possible across all of our platforms. And, you know, like I said, we're looking forward to 2021 and you know, having a really good year.
What about the Tanner Holmes merch? You got to mention the merch.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, you can go to www.tannerholmes.com/shop. All of our new stuff for this year. And we're, you know, that's one thing we're really trying to turn into more than just like one t-shirt here and there. It's more, you know, new stuff dropping every couple months. We're even doing some cool stuff with wing panels, trading cards, even, you know, you can even buy panels that were wrecked off my car and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, Tanner, thanks for the time today, dude.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.